people come in, come. And I know the Cami will be able to post the link for you guys to register or sign in at the on the chat. So just follow them. Make sure you put your name in there so we can check attendance for that. So today we'll have, it's sad to say, it's our last session. We are going to review step 7. And this one is about having students participate in a structured reading and writing activities. So learning objective. I can create a plan to implement strategies from the 7 steps to language rich interactive classroom in my school. So that's our goal every single time we meet. So when we do our observations, we want to make sure that you guys are able to implement these strategies. And we're just going to review real quick, since we have been doing a review every time that we meet. So I just want to make sure that we just do a quick review. Like on the first one, it talks about what to say when students they don't know. Have students speaking complete sentences, randomized. And I have seen a lot of teachers using like one of the links that Cami shared, how to pick their names, which is great. Total response signals, thumbs up, thumbs down, put your pencil up. Visuals, which is great. I feel like visuals are more helpful than actually translating word by word. Vocabulary strategies of how to use 5 vocabulary words when you implement a new context. And I feel like all of those steps guide us to the step 6, which is QSSA, the big one of the strategies that is most used for like questioning, signal, STEAM, share, and assessed. And on step 6, it goes over a few more activities, but again, I feel like the QSSA is the biggest one, the one that we can implement more in the classroom, and I feel like it's the one that we actually do without recognizing that that's what we're actually doing when we have students participate, do the question, do the signal, help them write the sentence stem, share with somebody else, and then come back to the classroom and assess how they did the activity and what they learned. So I feel like everything has summarized on its own, like it goes smoothly to our biggest one, which is step 7. So all of those steps guide us to how do we do the structure for reading and writing. How do we get our students to write and read at the level we want them to? So this is a big one, and I feel like all of those take us to those. So the biggest takeaway is like the structure reading and writing activities to students gain deep understanding of content concepts while developing complex and content-specific language. And again, I feel like we do talk a lot to our students about reading and writing, but how do we implement it and how do we make sure that that's what we want them to be, that's what we want them to do? Why am I having my students read this? Why am I having my students write this? And what we are teaching, does that align to the context? Does that align to our objectives? Do they match? Are we teaching them for a purpose or just randomized? So how do I make sure students are ready to read this? Establish prior knowledge if they are not.
Awesome. So what is reading? Reading is rules involving the process of looking at symbols written down, and then we get meaning out of those symbols. That process of reading and writing are learned skills. They have to be explicitly taught. You have to explicitly learn them. Our own children, our babies, they learn how to listen and speak and are immersed in the language and naturally learn how to do those skills, listening and speaking. But they have kind of a jump. They have 4 or 5 years of that language immersion before we put them in academia. Our EL students don't have that luxury. They have to jump in and learn all of the skills all at once. So the more that we can integrate oral language and oral interaction into our reading and writing activities, the better that they'll be able to do those activities and grasp written language. So there are some great scaffolds and ways that you can support your students' reading. First one is to adapt the text, especially if you have a lower proficiency level student, newcomer student, or beginning student. They might be able to only work with a shorter version of a text that you're working on in class. Maybe you might have to shorten it and also simplify the vocabulary and language so that they can grasp the content that you're trying to teach. They're still gaining language. They're still hearing and interacting with the higher academic language that you are using in your classroom, but we still want to make the content accessible to them. And we also recommend possibly doing targeted translation, especially for high academic uh, terms in your classroom or vocab. So translating that, maybe having students have a bilingual glossary journal for your class to help them connect those ideas and connect the context and the vocab. And obviously adding visual supports, uh, having any sort of visual supports, any sort of charts or graphic organizers, pictures, having them act out what's happening, if you can do that, if it's a narrative. And then incorporating that oral language, opportunities to partner read, having them listen to the content in the text. And then scanning before reading. So our scanning strategy starting from the bottom, reading one sentence at a time, but from the bottom up, to focus on the language first and seeing anything that might be tripping up your students language-wise before they even try to tackle the content. And then previewing the new vocab and concepts before you even do any sort of reading, building on that background knowledge and giving them the vocab to be able to interact with the text. So some really great strategies that we wanted to share with you guys and that are in the book to help your students understand your text. So the first one is called Somebody Wanted But So. This helps students understand conflicts and resolutions, and is also a great way to help them organize their thoughts and summarization of a text. So identifying somebody, who's the person, who's the main character, what did they want, but this happened, and then what's the solution? And it organizes the information, and then they can take that information and in their own words write a summary. And you can do this for, there are many kinds of summarization frames for all content areas. So for math, you can give them the frame of the problem says, or the problem is asking me to do this. For science and social studies, you might have students look at the main ideas in this passage or this explanation are this. Some important words in this passage or explanation is this. And just identifying, practicing those, identifying those main key points and the main facts about a text. And here are some other structured reading activities. We have squeepers and Cornell notes, idea bookmarks, and the markup method. Depending on the type of text and your students and the level that they're at. So they might just be using Cornell notes and creating a really simple outline. They might even just draw pictures of the basic ideas of the outline, and then adding vocab, those main vocabulary words, and maybe some questions they have about the text. So within even these structured reading activities, you can scaffold them to fit your students' proficiency level.
One thing that I'd like to mention here is like introduce these strategies to your students, to your class, and we can say it's just for students. I mean, I know middle school and high school more than likely will be more into this because they're already more advanced. And even at the elementary level, I have seen students fourth grade, fifth grade, that they're already doing readings, even a second grader. And it will be nice to introduce them these activities and they can pick, select one which fit their needs more. Because for example, myself, I know the idea of bookmarks. I like to just read a context and I like to just have a sticky note and make a note and put it on that page. And then I go back to it and just read the sticky note rather than reading the whole page again. But if we were to do the mark method, I will put an X and then go back and think, what did I put an X for? What did the X mean? I know that the question mark will be, I have a question that I want to go back and ask somebody else, but it won't, that will be probably the only one that I will be able to go back and say, this has a meaning. So just think of what a strategy will fit more my students and what would they like. So not all of them will fit into one. So it'd be nice to introduce them to and see which one fits better for them when they start reading.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the same goes for the type of text that you're using. So narrative text structure is pretty uniform across the board with any narrative text, whether it's a nonfiction or a fiction. You have the basic storyline. Um, and so you can use the same graphic organizer across those stories. But if you're using informational texts, depending on the type of text that you're using and then the purpose that you were using the texts for, it will depend. Then you can choose the graphic organizer or activity that fits best with the text you're using. So if you want students to be able to classify different sort different things, then you would use classification activities. Um, but if you want them to maybe have a time sequence, be able to follow that linear path of this happened and this happened and this happened, then you would use the process or a time sequence graphic organizer or activity. So understanding what the purpose is of your text and the type of text you have is very important in supporting your students in reading texts in your class. And we have tons of examples here, and there's a lot of free examples and all sorts of things that you can find you can use in your classroom. You don't have to necessarily go out and buy anything because these are everywhere.
And think about like Kevin mentioned on the chat. So if their students are reading, but they're not ready to write, think about pictures that they can show. And so we don't want them to move forward into a new context until they're ready, or move them on into a more advanced reading or writing until they're ready to do so. So just think of that. So breaking that into different charts that she's showing here, it will give us an idea of where the students are if they're able to complete. I know the T chart and the diagrams are easier for them depending on the level. And then we have the ones where they have more questions and regarding into more deeper context of the reading they're doing. And so just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. And with that, some words of cautions. So now that the National Reading Panel reports is writing for monolingual English speakers, not ELs, and ELs is an accelerate, not a remediation, and to catch up with peers. So I'm sure many of you have seen this. They just want to move forward and not really remediate. But I feel like, and a lot of us, a lot of our students, not just ELL students, are behind, and I feel like that's why we even, not just with the state of Missouri, but a lot different states are doing different techniques, strategies, like letters as one to improve students' reading. So I feel like many of our kids, and I'll give you a quick sample. My son, he's a first grader reading at the third grade level. However, he reads fluently, he reads great, and you're able to comprehend what he is reading. But then you tell them, oh, what was the story about? I don't know. So is he actually reading? So that's when you ask yourself, he has great fluency, but then we ask him about the context and he's like, I don't know, I need to go back and reread what I read. So that's one of the things that we want to think about just in all of our kids, not just specific or ELL students. That socioeconomic status is not a reliable predictor of reading performance among all ELs. And I feel like this is again for all students. We do have the prediction of having students who have a low socioeconomic status to be lower at the reading level. Most literacy programs assume that the students are proficiency in English, so do not have offered adequate support. And yes, they don't have the appropriate scaffolds or resources to provide for those students. And local literacy not mean a lack of oral language. So again, we have students who do have the oral language, who are able to speak, and you will see a lot of our kids, especially younger age, who are doing great at the recess when they're playing with other kids. But when it comes into literacy, they don't have the background knowledge that they need to be where they should be at. And please feel free to stop by any time to have the conversation if we're going too fast. Now we move on to the writing. Determine the purpose of the writing. Can a student successfully complete the writing? So we'll have students that will start reading with a capital letter and they don't finish then to the end, like the last sentence or word at the end, that's where they put the period, not realizing that there's a lot of context that should have periods and start a sentence again. So they just would go crazy like writing. So having the strategy for them to write and what is the purpose for them to write something, we'll have to teach that. So this is one of these little pictures that I like to follow from Valentina Gonzalez. Not sure if you guys have heard her or if you follow her on Instagram, that writing sequence. So you think about what you're going to write, you talk about it with somebody else, then you write. Then you write a little bit more, and then you go back and talk to somebody else again. Then you revise and edit, and then you try again. I remember one of my ELL teachers, because if you don't know, I'm an ELL person myself. I came to NSS when I was 13, so that would have been middle school. And when I was in high school, I remember a teacher doing this. And I will always be upset because she always had to edit. And I remember myself, because we're not being taught different strategies of how to write. Here in the United States, you go straight to the point, straight line. And I don't know if you guys have seen this, how we in native and Spanish or Latin, we go in circles. So I remember writing a whole essay thinking it's a 5-paragraph essay. Great, I'm done. I wrote a lot. This is perfect. And then after the teacher edited it, it came down to just one paragraph because I repeat myself a lot, going back in circles. And I feel like that's one of the things that already allows students do. So we had to teach them the strategy of writing. What is the purpose? So we start with the main goal, the objective, what is our main topic, and then we can break it down into 3 subgroups, and then each one means something. So even teaching them how to write an essay. So once they start. Before I keep going, has anybody experienced any of this with your ELL students when it comes into reading or writing? Feel free to unmute yourself and just share. Are you guys in more advanced where your classes start with students that are ready to write, like levels? I feel like level 2 can write, a level 3 can write. And sometimes our levels 2 would share something that they wrote, and it's in both the first language and English as well. So you will see words that they're using that they don't know in English, and they use it in the first language. And remember, one of our strategies is wait time, so I can wait. Feel free to share. Or I can use the strategy of randomization and just pick one. So I'll pick our last person here, Jessica. Would you like to share some of your writing activities or writing process with your ELL students? Jessica, are you there? We're gonna have a quiet group this afternoon.
I can share something that I've recently started doing with
Okay.
kind of my whole class, but it really was prompted from someone that came and did professional development at our school. But we've just been color coding our writing, and that has helped actually my whole class, but I have multiple like ELL students in there. And some are they're at different levels, but slowing down and actually color coding has helped the revise and edit portion because I was kind of I'd give them a checklist and the checklist could be translated. Like I had all these strategies that I felt like weren't working. And then once we broke down like highlight your reasons, right? Highlight your evidence, different types of parts of their essay. Then they can visually see I'm missing a lot of what I need. And so it just reminded me of the circle because they're constantly like writing a paragraph, color coding it, writing a paragraph, color coding it. So they don't have to wait till the end to do it. They're doing it throughout. So I'm not sure if that matches your question, but
Yes,
that's
and
just
that's
one
pretty much
way.
what we, yes, that's a strategy. So you have them write something and they will go back and highlight or color code it, like you mentioned, different parts of the writing that they're doing. So yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing.
Going back to the reading just a little bit, I'm not doing as much writing, but I have been taking some reading activities from my ELL's high school classes and shortening them and then trying to find some vocabulary that is going to trip him up, like you said. Try to find verbs that I know he already knows, leaving a few things, of course, that he doesn't because I can't change everything. But if I can put a verb in there he already knows so he feels successful, I think that's pretty good. But I didn't think about the marking it up. I think that would be a good thing to have him put the things that concepts he knows or something that's new, mark it would be good.
Yeah, and I think if we teach like argumentative, formative, summative, and those are more to like more advanced of the reading and writing. If they're able to identify if those, you highlight them one color and then the other. So that'd be great. And that will help them understand what they're doing if it's persuasive, if it's good conflict. So once they're reading, they can understand. So that's great. Thank you both for sharing. And I know Cami just mentioned when I asked her if she know indirect cultures are sub-languages enhanced and really context combine their meaning. So yes, high-face cultures prioritize avoiding embarrassment or direct confrontation, often softening criticism and using euphemism of maintaining harmony. Thank you. Yes, thanks for sharing. And here we also talk about the types of the writing system. Um, One of the things that I feel like can make it easier for me when I move here to learn is that English and Spanish has so many similar words, cognates, and the words, the letters are the same. So going from one to the other one, it was not as difficult to understand. And writing or reading a book, I mean, we do have a different way of writing but the letters were the same. So I was able to make that. However, we have other languages that are not. They have different symbols. When we write from left to right, and some others right to left. And so that's everything when it comes to the writing is new to them. So can I imagine going to a different country that is completely different symbols that I want to understand. If they have visuals, probably, but again, the visuals also will be probably different. So we have like with here the picture Espanol, it's easy that we can do that one. But here we have the Korean. If you see those symbols are different, I want to understand like just by looking at the picture, to me, I see a number 2 and a number 7, but I don't see letters. Does that make sense? So that's what our kids that come from different languages, different backgrounds, different cultures they have. Here we have the syllabic, the logographic, the Mandarin Chinese, it will be completely different. And so even the way they talk, their accent, the way they make the sounds, is just totally out of my league. I will not be able to comprehend if I were to a different country. So can I just imagine? I mean, I do come from a different country, but again, it's a lot of cognitive similar. The words are the same. I can put them together, and here we're talking about different signs. If you see one from the other one the syllabus is more of circle pattern. Here's more signs. I mean, I can see the little circle and the apostrophes, but they probably mean something different. I mean, they do mean something different that I want to understand. So I can see our students having a hard time even just translating. And for us, it can be just one word that has two letters, and for them, it can be a word that has 5 different symbols to us. Have any of you had any experience with students writing or exposed to any of this, or have gone to a different country visit and see this? With the scaffolding? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna share something I learned. I lived in China for a while, and I guess something that I never really realized was we teach our students like sounding out words, but even that concept is so foreign, like to for Chinese speakers, just because they have to memorize their characters. It's not something that you can sound out. So I always find that interesting with like, I'm not sure how it works with Arabic, but I always think about that when other students are trying to like learn how to spell and like sound out words in English, if they like that could be a very different concept for them. Instead of just memorizing, they might want to memorize. So that's something I think about now with written language.
Thank you. And that brings a good point too. Like I said, I was born in Mexico, and we never, or we don't have sounds. So if you know, the 5 vowels is just 5 vowels, and those are the only sounds. So when you come here, vowels have, I believe, I mean, like over 20 some sounds. And so I looking at taking the training now for letters, and just knowing the sounds and the what sounds makes, and the short E and the long E. And it just drives me crazy. I'm like, we don't have this in Spanish. And how you make your mouth sound. And like you mentioned, in Chinese, they don't have to make or learn how to make your mouth do something, because that's the sound they should make if you do your mouth a certain way. And we do have that in English. So I didn't learn that either. And so it's just a great point that you point that out. And so it's one thing that we need to talk to our students. So they probably look at you funny when you try to teach them to make a sound. So interesting point. We always learn something new. Thank you for sharing. With the writing, the sentence stems, and we talked about that as well, paragraph frames. And I know sometimes we think like we're writing too much for our students, but we're making a huge effort for them to make a growth. Share the writing, provide writing samples, outline and graphic organizers. When it provides for writing samples, I remember when I was in the classroom teaching high school, I remember pairing up with another teacher who had a higher level of group of ELL students, and we'll talk about the same topic. They will write something, my kids will write something, and I always had the lower level ones. We'll swap the paperwork, of course, covering their names, and we'll provide samples of how they write. And then the kids from the higher level will provide feedback to their writing of how they can improve. And level ones will read the level 3s and 4s, and they will be able to see how they can improve. And so they know that I was there at one point, I can grow that much just by looking at another student sample that they're also in ELL program, and how much growth they can make. So just sharing that, it makes a huge difference for the students and just motivates them to write. The outline and graphic organizer, so we share a lot of those and how it will impactful be if we use them. So one thing that I always have done when we talk about the reading and the writing, to introduce a new concept, and sometimes our students will see their eyes like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's one sign for me when I say, okay, we need to stop with the reading, take out a graphic organizer, break it down to different points so you guys understand the reading more before we move on to the reading and the writing. So just one thing to keep in mind. Children need opportunities to use and develop language. So there's more of the hands-on activities, interactive, out loud, story time. I know that probably will sound silly, but I feel like even I taught high school in elementary, for those that are elementary, you have the circle time. I implemented that with my high school students and they loved it. So when we have the storytelling, we'll break into the circle and we read about the story, we show the title, something super simple that you do with the elementary students. I was doing it with the high school students just to get them motivated with the reading, and it worked great. The purpose of use of context vocabulary, speak slowly, clearly. And I know sometimes we talk about pronunciation and making sounds with our mouth. And we probably think it's being silly, but we're making them, their students, without even realizing, they look at our mouths for them to catch on the sound and the words. So I remember always looking, and even myself, like the word there. So always when they were talking, I had to make sure I look at their mouth to see which one was it. And I don't know if any of you students have shared that with you, that that's something that they like to do. And thank you, Cami. Modify the pace of the learning, experience learning, intentional context, meaningful conversations, be mindful of the culture of the students. And that's a huge one, especially for like high school and middle school. I remember having one teacher sharing their cultural background with the student who it's Middle Eastern, and they were having a topic about, and I think it's going on a lot right now with all what's going on in Texas about the sexual class. And you know how we have to be aware of what we can teach to our students and be culture sensitive. And then we're talking about the sexual class that they take in high school, the human body growth, and how those students from the Middle Eastern, because of the religion, they couldn't be part of it. And so one of the teachers trying to be more of a sensitive culture, let them go to the library and then pick a book. You cannot be part of the class, but you can pick a book that talks about that. And she took out a book, check out a book, take it home. The next day, the mom came super upset. She was furious because girls should not talk about that. The pictures that are shared on those books are not allowed for them within the religion. And so it was a huge dilemma, but it was more of the teacher wanting to be sensitive, and they weren't being letting them be part of that class. And so she just thought, let's go and grab a book that you can take home and read on your own. But then again, this was something that we had to be culture sensitive. And there's so many topics that we can talk about and we cannot, depending on their culture, religion. So something to keep in mind. I'm not sure if we have any elementary teachers, but this is a great activity. We talked about the QTRIPL essay and how the students can read and write. This is one book. My first grader, my son, came home with it. He talked about the book, and my 4-year-old, it's just loving the story, and you can see the kids here also talking about it, reading about it, and my girl was able to write a story, and she's not able to read yet or write. Sorry, based on my son's reading, she was able to catch and she was able to draw pictures of the sequence of the book. And this is also something that you guys can see with the elementary kids, for those that have younger kids. Do we have any elementary teachers? No elementary teachers that they
Yes,
can.
I teach fourth grade.
Okay, what is your experience has been when it comes to like level ones and being able to read or write? Do you allow them to use the visuals? Are there any specific books that they're more interactive or attractive to them?
It kind of depends, like, if they're a newcomer or, like you said, if they are like kind of level one, just picture books and audio. And then eventually kind of like weaning them off of those, and challenging them eventually. But I generally let them use that, or even like having breaks and using like a book that they like in their native language. Luckily, our school has a large group or a large amount of those. And so kind of going back and forth. It is a struggle for me to know how much to challenge and like make them go to the next level and allow them to choose a book that they like feel comfortable with. Sometimes I don't know when to switch.
That's a good point, but I feel like the students will let you know and be when they're ready to switch. Sorry. Oh, did somebody was going to say something? Okay, I feel like somebody was going to say something. I heard a voice in there, But yes, I feel like sometimes your students will let you know when they're ready to move on. Jessica, thank you. Have you used it not a literacy? Yes, so this providing a resource. Thank you for sharing. Here's one that we talk about also, what we call the swirl, and this is this activity. It started with only the 4 domains, like the WIDA. It has the speaking, writing, reading, and listening, and then later on they added the interactive. And so it's more of like I do it, we do it, and you do it. And so I feel like this one is a great activity to do when we involve all 4 domains, when we have the students lesson first, and then we have them talk about it, and then we let them read again. And I feel like this is something I read to them. They talk about it, and then they can read on their own. So they're reading it twice, and then they interact, and then they write about it. So it's just a quick activity that you guys can do with your students. And then when you do that, you assess them. Here's more things of what I do. So think aloud, you're allowed. And a lot of the kids like to do like the popcorn reading as well. Multimedia, and I know some of them love to do like the iMovies where they're also reading, talking, and writing what they wanted. On the iMovie, there's some parts where they can do some writing. That we do the group work, shared writing. The teacher's role becomes the listener and questioning. And then we all do. The teacher clarifies confusion and provides support, which is the main factor. So it's great to walk around when they're doing that we do to make sure that we hear if they're struggling, what they are taught, what their ideas are, so that we can answer or clarify if sometimes they don't want to ask the question. And so look for clarification, complete the process in small groups. So sometimes you will hear their conversations and you will realize if they need more time, if they should move to a different group. So it's always good to keep that ear open. And then don't be afraid to push your students, like you were mentioned, Cross, your students to independence. If you have supported them, they should be able to do it. So we have provided them the skills, so we have provided them the support, the scaffolds, and we feel like they're ready. I think we should let them be ready. I think we should let them be more accountable for their learning as well. So it's one thing that I like to do once they get the reports, and let them know with the access, here's where you are, where would you like to be by the end of the next school year. And so show them their growth, and you will see how much improvement and how much more they're willing to do. Here's one of the rowing activities, and I believe we did one sample at the beginning of it. I don't know if it was like probably session 1 or session 2. And it's a great activity I like to do within the classroom when we do PDs. This is what you do. Sorry. Sorry. The writing activity incorporates listening, speaking, so all 4 domains, even if it's all of them, regardless of the level. It's a low stress, so the kids are not with the stress about I'm gonna speak, random flexibility, so they can, sometimes you will see the kids that they pick their best friend or the buddy or the ones that they talk to the most or whoever they feel comfortable with, and they have a structured conversation, so it's not just a random talk. So there's a structure for them to make this activity. So there's a structure for reading and writing. So you provide a sentence. So like here we have one thing I can do to ensure ELs that are successful in the class is blank. So you provide a sentence for them. And this can be regarding of the activity that you're doing with them or the reading, or something that you're going to introduce, like science, biology within topic. So this can be something where it's more of introduction of the content. So you have the students copy the sentence and fill it in. So you let them do that first. So you wait and have them do the signal, thumbs up or pencils down whenever they're ready. And then you let them know before. So once they're done, you let them know that they're going to be moving to graph their sentence. And then you provide, they will be ready to prepare for sentence 2. So they will stand up, hand up, and pair up. They will read their sentence that they wrote, the first sentence that you provided, to somebody else, so their partner. And then once they have done that, you provide the second sentence. It also benefits too, and you can add, of course, depending on your context. So they will add a second sentence. This can be something based on their conversation they had, or they can steal their idea from the person they were talking with. Put the sentence together, so now they have 2 sentences. have them write down within the group the person that they have, and then we do another sentence. So once they are done, again, do the signal. Whenever they're ready, thumbs up, hands up, and then let's rub again. And then you do have them pair again with somebody else. So say goodbye to the person, pair up with somebody else, read that sentence to each other. So now they have two sentences, and then the third one will be here. Finally, I want to remember. And they fill in the blank. And this can be, again, you can go on and to probably write 5 sentences if you wanted to, depending on how much context you want them to get. And then they may steal the idea from the partner and then grab a new one, write something down, and then by the end of this, they should have a paragraph of 3 or 5 sentences, depending on how much you have put together. Then you have them return to their home group, so where they started. And then within those groups, they can share their ideas. So that the whole paragraph they can read to them. And if they would like to, they can share within the whole group, with the whole class. So it's a great, great, great one that I love to do with students and teachers when we're doing PD. And a minute ago, we were talking about the swirl. Is one thing that I like to do as well when I was a classroom teacher. And this goes great for those students that are like beginning, developing, or what are more advanced. So we'll talk about the talk. Oh, I don't know what I did. Sorry, I click on it. But here is, I click on it by accident, I'm sorry. But here is the guy who created that activity. And is also the person who did the I will talk about it in a minute, but he did the sentence where they, you know how in Spanish we write el carro rojo, the red card, and in English is the other way. And so he also has a great activity about it that we'll talk about it in a minute, but let me get back to the presentation. Are you guys able to see that? Okay, I don't know what I did. Sorry, I got to engage into the activity. But when you have the students do the reading, you talk, you read, you talk, you read. And so this is more of interactive. This is more of in students like hands-on moving around. And this can be with students. When I do this, I allow my students to do in different languages, in their own language if they needed to. Or if they want to, of course, within the group that they do or they talk, it has to be able to understand. And sometimes I even let them do the visuals to show them or point out the things. And then they write. When they're in the middle, I was at like level 2 or 3, we'll do the talk, read. So it's more read and less talk, and then they do the writing. For more advanced students, then we have the talk and then read more and then talk a little bit more, like summarizing, putting your thoughts together, and then putting into context in the writing. So this is a great, I think, that I like to do with students because it involves all 4 domains. Any questions so far? So, and then what about our students that they don't know how to, students who can't write? So we'll have those for sure. So everyone can reflect. So we talked about those students and we'll take a minute and say, hey, let's talk about it, where you are. If this is too advanced for you when it comes to the reading, let's move down a little bit of level. We should allow students to put something down. So basic sentence, sometimes we have students who can write the words that they know in English, then allow them to use the words that they know in their native language. We want students to feel understand, to also wonder. So if I'm reading this, what more can I get? What more should I know? Should look for characters? Is there a video that can give me something more? If they seem confused, look for more clarification. And another, even with IA, I forgot to mention this earlier, but you can go back and say to ChatGPT, summarize this novel in this language, then it gives you a brief summary of the novel, and this you can give this to your students so that they know what we're going to read. And it's just for those that are still more confused. Allow them for the reflections, minimize corrections. And one thing that I always like to let you know and talk about is if we are having our students write something that is not big, it's a small paragraph, and then we just focus as teacher on the grammar errors and we turn that back to the students, we are doing a harm more than a benefit. So the students will focus on saying, oh, I have this so many errors, I shouldn't be writing. And so we focus on, you did great, this is how much you can write, this is a complete sentence, tell me more about this, what you're trying to say here, elaborate on those ideas, rather than focusing on the errors, because we want them to motivate them. So the spelling and the mechanism should be, we should worry about it, but later on. So let them express themselves in the writing, and then we'll focus those on that. And I feel like if we pushed our students to do more reading, I feel like the more you read, the more that you become better at writing when it comes into the mechanism and spelling. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but that has been my experience. So reading helps me get better at my writing. Any comments, feedback? I don't know what your experience has been. I know that I remember when we started with the letters, I remember one of the questions at the beginning was, do you remember your first or when you first were reading? And I honestly don't remember when I was little, but I remember that coming here to United States, that's how I remembered how I started to be able to write in English. I feel like the more I read, the more I was able to put sentences together. Again, this is my own experience, but I feel like there's a truth behind it. Here's also with describes the process of differentiating the writing. So the age and language development, recount textual at the beginning, more developing, expanding the form, the support, provide evidence, the more to the bridging, exploring. So I feel like there's where more students can write about more some of the persuasive writing and things like that. And here Cami shares focus on one of the skills, like I noticed that you aren't capitalizing the first letter in your sentences in your next writing. In your next writing at work on capitalization, the first letter. So yes, so little by little you teach them and let them know that it's something wrong that they did. Thank you for sharing, Cami. So while you teach for beginners or final, so say here's something pretty simple that they can do. They know the who, the what, the when, the where. And so when you have them read something, they can, when they're hearing what the person is reading to them, they can answer those questions and break it down. And this is also another great structure for your book. The role, the audience, the format, the topic, and this more for the persuasive of the writing activities. So here's where you can use them in the language, art, math, and science, the role, the audience, the format. And again, this is more for like probably the high school. Experts become the writing. Students take one role of an expert. And so they have a topic that they're going to talk about and they know it all. And you will have those students that they feel like, oh, I know this. And so they let them talk about it, let them express themselves, let other students listen to their student. And then they will be ready to tackle the writing. And here's what I was talking about, the picture word inductive model. This is the great activity that I was mentioning. And whenever you guys have time, I would strongly suggest to go and look at the video. He talks about the importance of the structure of the writing. He does color coded of like green on the verbs, the nouns are red, and so on and so forth. And so we have the students write a sentence put together by color coded, knowing where the noun goes, where the verb goes, where the adjective goes. So it's great for those that are starting to put sentence together, like the basic of putting sentence together. So I would strongly suggest to go and look at the video, and he will give you a great idea of how to start. And yes, and this is great for all grade levels. I feel like elementary, it's also great. And if we use the visuals, like we have a picture of a person, knowing that's a noun, a person, a human, that's a noun, and the activity that they're doing, and they can, with using the visuals, they can put the visuals together, and you let them know that makes a sentence and what sentence it makes. So it's great for all grade levels. So here's about reviewing the idea, review the writing context, act as a scribe, draw again, and honor the capture of the students' ideas. They can make their own after capturing what they read. and especially put it on paper. And to finalize, the structure of reading and writing strategies are essential of creating deep comprehension and new learning. So I feel like this book has been great of teaching us step by step, how do we get to reading and writing with a purpose, not just read to read, not just write to write. Like I said, my son reads, but he doesn't understand what he's reading. I mean, at his level, first grader, he understands those books, but he's reading at a second grade level, and he's not understanding there yet. So I feel like having a purpose for us to teach our students to read and write, and what is the purpose behind it, makes a huge difference. And I feel like this book has given us every step of the way to get there. Here are some websites that we encourage you to go back and look. And here, I know that Camila, please correct me if I'm wrong, but these are some of the QR codes that also, if you read the book, there are also some here that it gives you the activity to go and look. That demonstrates, it models for you the activity that they're talking about during that time. And so you can scan this also, and here it gives you like the book shirt, and you can scan the code, the BARD. Thank you that I work with a student that is pretty low in all levels. When I work with him on writing, I encourage him to use capitals in the end sentence. Periods, that's where we revise the writing to the base. Yes. And again, we have, like in Spanish, we don't capitalize, for example, days of the week, right? So here in English, we capitalize the days of the week, the months. In Spanish, we don't. So that's another structured thing that we have to teach our students, and it's pretty basic. So if we just do it, or cities, thank you, Cami. So if we just do that pretty basic, we're not teaching them exactly the grammar, but it is. So we say in English, we do it this way, and I know the other languages is done differently. And so just let them know. Not say this is wrong, but just say this is how we do it here. Here are more QR codes to scan for resources. I don't know, here, Cami provided a lot of really helpful resources. And we encourage you to go and look at them. And I know that this for like different, like the visual vocabulary, we talk about that, how great it is to provide those visuals when you're teaching a lesson plan, that you need those visuals, like phonemics, when we talk about making the sounds. So it's a lot of great resources that we strongly suggest for you to go. Here's more of the Venn diagram chart that we talked about. So I feel like you can go in and put a lesson plan together by using some of these resources.
This page has a lot of samples of how letters look and sound in different languages. So one of the things we've done in some of our past workshops is we take the English language and the student's home language and make a Venn diagram where the English letter sounds are on one side and the home language sounds are on the other side, and where they cross over are sounds that are shared. So a lot of times when we're working with these students, we start with the shared letter sounds that they have in common and build off of those, and then point out the ones that aren't in their vocabulary, and those are the ones we'll work on. But these links will give you some, like, you can listen to the sounds and see the sounds that are in common. And that Venn diagram chart is one of those where it has the crossover of the languages and what they share in common. So we just wanted to give you that if you're interested. If you're nerdy about languages like I am and want to know how language sounds work, this kind of gives you some of that information.
Thank you, Cami. I don't know, this one is something that Cami created as well. And I know that there's, Cami mentioned there's a code here where you can put the code there and use it to add a language that you need.
Yeah. So this, all they have to do is type the word in the left-hand column in English, and it will automatically translate it into the other languages. If there are other languages that you need, you can create another column, and you just follow the formula and put a new code for that language in the next column. So there's a tutorial on how to do that at the YouTube link on the bottom. there are other places that you can get similar things that are already done, like it's EL 2.0. They have one that you can use from their site. When I use this in the classroom, I would give the link to my students so they could keep their own like library of words for themselves, and they just kept the list in that they could go to and translate automatically. And if they got stumped by a word, they just type it in and it would automatically give them that word in their home language if they read in their home language. So it's kind of a cool tool.
I did it again. I'm sorry, I don't know what it's doing, but that's all what we have. So I want to say thank you so much for joining us. I believe today is our last session for this book, and I know that Cami has an announcement to make for the summer.
Yes, and the very end of May, early June, we're going to start another book study. This one will not require classroom visits. It will be like one chapter per week. We will record them, so if you're unable to join us for the sessions, you can go back and watch them. But this is going to be over the recently released version of Carol Salva's Boosting Achievement. So you'll get the book and then read it at your pace, and then we'll take one chapter at a time and discuss, kind of like we did with this book, and add some things in, and kind of like we did this one, only we won't be doing the classroom visits. And you'll get, like I said, you'll get the free book and you'll get credit for attending. And more information will be coming in the next week or so about that.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions for us?
Oh, I did want to say also, if you haven't gotten in your classroom visits, I know we missed several because of the weather. We'll make those up throughout the next month or so. Just contact one of your mail people, whoever's the closest to you or me, and we'll work with your schedule to try to get those in so that you can meet that requirement for getting your money and materials for your classroom. So just get a hold of us and we will work with you for that.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. Please keep us posted if you guys have any questions. Thank you. I have learned a lot. Thank you, Mary. Hope this has been helpful for you guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye, Candace.
Thank you, ladies. Can't believe it was the last one. Went by fast.
It did go fast, but they weren't very talkative tonight. They must be
Oh, I was surprised.
tired.
It's usually pretty talkative, and they're usually more like more than 20 participants. So today was
Yeah.
way less and pretty quiet.
I don't know
Mhm.
what's. They're all
So
tired. It's that time of year. We're
yes, I'm
finishing
sure
up
they're ready for some
testing
break.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, well,
Well, thank you so much.
thanks for being here. Thank you,
We'll
Rhea.
see.
Thank you, Guadalupe.
Oh, thank you. We'll see you guys next time. Well,
All
next
right.
week on
Next
Thursday.
week. Yeah.
We'll see you guys there.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.